Mr. Jonathan Rodrigues is a lawyer and a mediator, currently empaneled at Camp Mediation, Bangalore. Mr. Jonathan has studied his LLM in Mediation and Conflict Resolution from University of Strathclyde, UK, following his bachelor's degree in Psychology and Law from Goa University. Jonathan co-founded the PAC, an organization dedicated for creating mediation awareness in India. The interview will revolve around the theme Career in Mediation, and Jonathan will walk us through it. The interview is divided into various sections wherein firstly we'll be talking about your journey in mediation and how you pursued your education. Then we will be talking about the future and career prospects. And lastly, we'll move on to the advice and tips you want to give to the students. We'll also have a rapid fire round at the end. So shall we begin?
Sure.
Okay. So firstly, let's talk about your career. So you started your career in mediation in 2016, even before Bar Council of India recognized it as a compulsory subject. You co-founded the PAC and later on went to pursue masters in mediation and conflict resolution. So what was that leading factor that kept you inclined towards the subject and kept you going right from the starting to pursue masters, as it is not the most conventional legal career option?
Right. Yeah, thanks. That's a great question. I think it started for me somewhere in 2015, actually, not 2016. Of course, I graduated from law school in 2016, but I got acquainted with mediation much before that. But to your question, I think I was just super restless in law school. I knew it was not my cup of tea. Law is a very interesting subject, but that's when you look at it from a very holistic perspective. It's not just about statutes or precedents or judgments. I think we keep forgetting that it's about people and their problems, right? And it's not as black and white as it seems to be in law school. And by the time we learn about this in the real world, when we get outside, it's too late, because then we are faced with a storm of identity crisis and career choices and a lot of peer pressure, family expectations, and then you just go with the flow. You don't know where you're going. Thankfully for me, I got to discover this quite early in my law school. So in the second year itself, I was doing a 3-year law course. In the second year itself, I got to explore mediation. I did a couple of trainings. I did a couple of competitions. I got some international exposure to these competitions. I also attended a couple of conferences in mediation. And that's where I brought in all these experiences, all this networking back to India. And of course, when we graduated, we created the PACT, which is an institute to basically create awareness for mediation in India. And I think it all just started over there. So if you'd ask me what inspired me, I think right in my early days in law school, I knew that, not every case needs to be litigated. Not every case needs to go to court, right? And that's something that was very ingrained inside me. I knew that this was not something I wanted to pursue. And so I think the LLB course, of course, happened as an accident, but the LLM, which was in mediation, was more intentional. And I think one of the reasons why I chose to do my LLM recently was because I was burning out much before I could even explore the world of mediation. And, I needed to have a very strong theoretical basis in mediation. And that's why one of the reasons that I chose to do my LLM, which I think was one of the best decisions I made, because it has helped me really get a proper understanding, a holistic understanding of what mediation is. So there are a lot of other law students like me who probably are lost in law school, and maybe they don't look at litigation as something that they would like to pursue as a career. And I guess I hope they're inspired by this interview. I hope they're inspired by my journey and, someday think of pursuing a similar path. But let me tell you, it's not going to be easy, all right? Because just like, every case doesn't have to be litigated, it doesn't mean that every case can be mediated. So you'll always face a lot of backlash from, the legal community who will say that, not every case can be mediated. Stop, pulling everything into mediation. And that's true. But I think sometimes that also kind of puts a hurdle with regards to taking those cases that are suitable for mediation and pursuing them through a mediation path. So, I guess I knew that I had to do something different, and that's what I'm pursuing right now.
Talking about your higher studies, you firstly did psychology, then did a bachelor's in law, and then went ahead to pursue master's in mediation. You have also assisted in designing the course module of MNLU's first master's degree in mediation. as I was going through it, I found that there's a mention of neuropsychology in paper 7. Considering the exposure and importance you have given to the subject, can you throw some light over what role does it play in conflict resolution and mediation?
Well, I wouldn't know what the paper of neuropsychology basically involves in the M&A course module, because there is a faculty that's taking care of that. But let me steer your question with regards to how important psychology is in mediation. And because mediation is all about facilitating conflicts between people. And there's no field of study that has researched the human psyche better than psychology, right? So as I said earlier, a law is only a very small part of dispute resolution. At the end of the day, the conflict is about the person, right? And a very popular theory in mediation is, and we keep saying this, is separate the person from the problem, and you're more likely to find a resolution to the dispute. So what is separating the person from the problem? It's wherein you understand that beyond the material demands, which might be legal or financial, there are deeper interests of, say, reputational damage, character assassination, ego clashes, personality deflation, mental health deterioration. You have a lot of things that are out there which are beyond legal and financial matters, and those require solutions, and those require person-based solution, not problem-based solution. Psychology helps you understand the person behind the problem, and I think that's what mediators really dwell on. And it's very interesting for a lot of you who are still getting acquainted with mediation. There's a whole school of mediation called as transformative mediation, which deals with recognition of the individual and empowerment of the individual. Okay, so they believe that once parties learn to recognize the person behind the problem, and then this person is empowered, this person can then go on to resolve their own disputes. They don't need assistance from a third party individual, right? So relationships and communications are handled first in transformative mediation, and then problem solving becomes much easier. So, psychology does play a huge role in mediation. You have, Sigmund Freud, who spoke to us about the id, the ego, and the superego, the needs, wants, and desires of people. And a lot of times mediators use this because a lot of parties come to the table and they have a lot of demands. Some of the demands that they have, they don't understand themselves. And then we help them try to prioritize what their real interests are. And from there on, it becomes much easier to, get to the real problem. So if you work with the person, then it gets much easier to work with the problem. And therefore, psychology plays a huge role in mediation. And as mediators, we spend a lot of time understanding the human psyche as much as we spend time, taking care of the problem. Because with the problem, we know the party is there, the party is lawyer there, and they take care of the problem. But as mediators, a lot of mediators spend a lot of time on the person. We work with the people behind the problem. So I would say the fact that MNLU Mumbai, who has now started a master's course in mediation, have taken a lot of effort to make sure that psychology is a big part of that curriculum, and whether it's neurobiology or whatever else that's part of the curriculum, it's going to bring in a lot of focus to the person behind the problem. And I'm very happy about that part of it.
Okay, so moving on, we came across a blog written by you titled The Mediation Advocate's Alphabet. In that, we found following line in the description of letter L, legal issues. It said, and I quote, there may be some issues that in the agenda that cannot be mediated. You may propose to arbitrate those issues. Mediation and arbitration are often used interchangeably. So we would like to ask you to elucidate what is arbitration, conciliation, mediation, and negotiation, and how different they are from each other.
Yeah, this has been my struggle for the last 5 years, trying to let people know that these are very different things. I think it all started with the problem is with the Arbitration and Conciliation Act. As the name suggests, they clubbed both arbitration and mediation together when there are two different forms of dispute resolution. So I guess the people who were preparing the legislation were not, they didn't probably take it too seriously with regards to realizing of how it could lead to a misunderstanding. It's like clubbing Ayurveda and allopathy and homeopathy all together. These are different means, right? These are different means to getting healed. In the same way, arbitration and mediation and conciliation are different paths to reaching a solution, to reaching justice, if you want to call it, or peace, or solving a problem. So some people, there's so much of misunderstanding because of this. Some people, of course, confuse it with meditation, which is a very popular misunderstanding. But then there are others who think it's some kind of, illegal business or a private system run by the mafia. And I'm not making this up. There are some people who also think that it's some kind of voodoo stuff, to deal with magic. So mediation has had its bad impressions, I guess, with people. But I think the next biggest problem with mediation was that it got clubbed with ADR, right? And mediation is not just an alternative. You will agree with me that it's a primary tool of dispute resolution. It's one of the first things that people should try and opt for before they go to court, right? It's a primary form of conflict resolution more than dispute resolution, because mediation plays a role in a dispute much before it turns into a dispute. Mediation can come in when there's a difference of opinion, when there's a disagreement, much before it turns out into a public dispute. So I think how I would differentiate it is when there's a problem, firstly and foremostly, people try and talk it out themselves. They have that communication, right? And that's a dialogue, that's a negotiation. And when negotiation fails, then you try and use someone, you try and go and bring somebody else to help you, right? And mediation is one of those parts. So I like doing this exercise with a lot of people where I explain who an arbitrator is and who a conciliator is and who a mediator is. So let's take, for example, there are two siblings. So the very popular orange story in mediation. Okay, so there's one orange left in the house and a brother and sister are fighting over it. They're literally pulling out each other's hair and claiming that to be their share. So they first go to the mother. Okay, and the mother, of course, is all our mothers are great arbitrators. So the mother, of course, wants to get out more information. She will ask, who had the last share? I saw you eating the last one last night. What about that? What about this? Get me evidence. How many did we buy? All kinds of questions. So basically trying to prove a point. Okay, and then a mother will say, either the brother deserves it or the sister deserves it, and one of them will finally win and the other person will lose. Right? Then if you don't choose to go to your mother, you might choose to go to your father, and fathers don't have patience. Right? So I like to look at the father as a conciliator. He doesn't make decisions, but at the same time, he doesn't have patience to listen to you. Right? So he'll probably say, okay, fine, this is what it is. Let's since it's going to create a family ruckus right now. Let me suggest a solution. So like a true conciliator, he will suggest a solution. He'll say, let's split that orange into half. What do you say? And you take half and the other person takes half. And no, it's still not working out for both the brother and sister, because they're like, no, I deserve the entire orange. And that's when you might try and go to your grandmother. And I look at the grandmother as a mediator. So she'll be like, all right. And, grandmothers have a lot of time on their hands. So they will sit down with a lot of patience. They'll talk to you. They'll be like, speak to probably her grandson first and say, why do you want the whole orange? It seems like the whole orange is important to you. So why do you want the whole orange? And he'll be like, what kind of a stupid question is that, grandmom? I need the whole orange. I need the pulp to make some good juice. And then she'll be like, okay. And then she'll go to the granddaughter and say, why do you need the whole orange? And the granddaughter will say, I have a craft assignment tomorrow and I need the entire peel. I need the entire skin of the orange. And she'll be like, oh, all right. So then she'll bring them both together and then she'll say, so what I hear from you is that you want the peel, and what I hear from you is that you want the pulp. So what do you think we should do? Remember, she is not giving the solution. She's asking them, what do you think you must do? So she's asked the right questions. She's got the right information. And then she's making them think themselves about the solution. And that's what a true mediator does. So that's how I would differentiate between mediation, conciliation, and arbitration. I hope that that gives you a broader perspective of what each process is.
Sure. It was really easily explained. Mediation is a speedy process, but one of the main disadvantages is that it deals with settlement of disputes mostly via monetary compensation, which may not prevent the wrong, but instead may motivate the wrongdoer. So what are your views on this?
If parties tend to dishonor a settlement contract or a settlement agreement, there are two recourses for the other side. And that is, one is you either go back to court to enforce it, or you begin a whole fresh litigation, right? And it depends on how you start the mediation. So right now, hopefully, as I speak, I know that there are rumors that they're going to have a mediation law very, very soon. And I can't give you more information than that, but very, very soon they're going to be having a mediation law. But up till now, the only way, the more wise way to start a private mediation is to basically make sure that you begin it as a conciliation under the Arbitration and Conciliation Act. And so when you end it, you can also end it as a conciliation under section 73 or 74 of the Arbitration and Conciliation Act, which means that the agreement is now a conciliation settlement agreement, right? Or a reconciliation settlement award, which means that tomorrow, if one party dishonors it, you have to basically just go back to court to enforce it. If you don't start it as a conciliation, start it just as a mediation, it's absolutely fine. It's still binding on the parties. Okay, remember, it's still binding. It's just not easily enforceable. So that all that you can do is, in case one party dishonors the contract, is you're going to go back to court and start a litigation process. So the wise thing to do is start it as a conciliation, end it as a conciliation, so that it's easily enforceable. But we hope with the new mediation law, all these problems are going to go out of the door. We will have a smooth access to enforcement, which means that a mediation settlement agreement will be as good as a conciliation award or an arbitration award. So we're looking forward to that. Now, the fact that also mediation arises out of a consensual negotiation, right? It's right from the start, right from convening a mediation till it ends, till a settlement is reached. It's a voluntary process. It's a consensual process, which means that there are very, very little chances of parties backtracking and changing their mind, because no one is forced to settle. They take their own time to settle. So, but once again, that doesn't mean that someone can change their mind. Someone can. And so basically you have to be cautious about it. And so we suggest that parties start as a conciliation, end as a conciliation, as a procedure. But the process, the style of being a third party can be a mediator. Right.
Okay, sir. So recently, Bar Council of India mandated mediation to be taught in both 3-year as well as 5-year LLB degree courses right from this academic year, that is 2020-21. How effective will the above step be in the field of mediation? And apart from this, how can an aspiring student like me proceed in regards with internship, literature, what to study, how to study, etc.?
Okay, so the first question, I think the BCI's decision has brought a lot of interest to mediation education, which has been great. But you would know that there were people doing this much before the BCI's decision. Over a decade ago, you have people who've been trying to spread awareness about mediation, and it's a great step that the Bar Council of India has finally acknowledged that, and they know that mediation is actually happening right now. So well, I only hope that we get the right people to be teaching us mediation in our law schools. Okay, because if law students get a wrong impression of mediation, that's the last thing this country needs right now. So if a person who understands the difference between arbitration and mediation, who is not ready to compromise on the principles of mediation, then you have a good teacher teaching you mediation. So I hope that happens. To your question about where do you go forward as a law student, I think there's no substitution to reading, right? I would advocate 3 major blogs that all law students should try and read. Start with mediate.com. Okay, it's got a huge resource of articles written over decades from mediators across the world. Then you can try a Kluwer mediation blog, which also has, everyone's familiar with the Kluwer arbitration blog, but you should try the Kluwer mediation blog. And then you also have the IMI mediation blog. Now, when you read these articles, now I'm not saying that there are no other mediation blogs. There are plenty of mediation blogs. You can just Google it and you'll find it. But and please read everything that's out there. But always remember one thing: try and read different concepts from different authors. The way we look at neutrality or confidentiality in India is different from the way someone might look at it in the US or in Europe or in Africa. So try and read different authors from different jurisdictions, and you'll get a more holistic understanding of what different concepts mean to different people and different practitioners in different jurisdictions. After reading, I think there is nothing like researching and writing and finally trying to practice it in your daily life. I think you should try and get it out there. When you go and you're working with lawyers, or when you're working with in law firms, try and ask your partners, try and ask your senior lawyers that whether you can, if you see let me go through all your files, right, and say that let me dig up all the files and see which of these files can be actually mediated, or can be, forget mediation, can be even negotiated. Let me try and call up the other side and see if they're ready to sit down and negotiate. I think you should start right there. You should literally take the bull by its horns and say, let me get it done. say, give me access to all your files, let me read through whatever is here and see what I can pull into negotiation or mediation. So I guess that's the way you go with it. Try and do as many workshops as you can. As if you can afford to do a training, it would be great to do a training, but try and do as many workshops, webinars that are available out there to gain that knowledge. Try and intern with lawyers or firms that have a good mediation practice going on. So I think that's the only way you start building up your interest and your resume in mediation as a law student.
Thank you so for suggesting those three works we all keep in mind. So you have been involved in mediation practice both nationally and internationally. According to you, which country is the flag bearer of this career practice in the field of education, and how far does India have to go?
Well, let's look at it this way. If you're looking at how mediation literature and mediation practice has evolved, then I think the US and the UK have a lot of material. But I wouldn't say they're the flag bearers of sorts. I think everyone has, mediation is deeply rooted in our culture in South Asia. India has got a deep understanding of mediation right from the times of your Nyaya Panchayats or Lok Adalats, or much before that, even in the Vedas. And I've been reading a lot about that. So there's a lot that's there already. The idea of bringing a third party and helping people resolve disputes has always been part of our culture. Now, the Western understanding of mediation may be a bit difficult for Indians to look up to, but I think India has the market, India has the interest, and India has the skills. So now it's all about us making it happen. And I see there's a lot of scope for mediation turning into a huge profession in a decade's time from now, and that's my hope.
Sure, sir. We hope that too. So it's very fascinating to know that you were involved in MNLU's master's degree program, which provides for India's first master's degree in mediation and conflict resolution. And so the students have a package to stride on. Considering the avenues opening up for these courses, what, according to you, is the future of mediation in India?
Well, just as I said to your last question, I hope that it turns into a huge profession by 2030. That's my hope. So I would like to see, a lot of other mediation firms, a lot of mediation centers employing young law graduates, talented young graduates who can just get out of law school, who don't want to practice litigation, who don't want to practice corporate law, but who want to get into a more collaborative way of resolving disputes. So I think that would be my dream, to see that happen in 2030 at least. I see a lot of law firms opening mediation wings, and that's my vision. When I say I hope to see that happening by 2030. All right, and I also hope that a lot of advocates and senior counsels get trained to represent clients in mediation. So that's my goal. That's my hope for 2030. That's where we'll be in 10 years from now.
Sir, if we compare the number of litigation firms or corporate firms with that of mediation firms, we find a huge gap, provided that mediation is a growing practice for the past 3 to 4 years. Given the current situation, how should a student like me have a successful career in the mediation?
Yeah, that's a good question. I can't tell you to follow my path, because the path that I have taken doesn't really exist. They talk about the road less traveled, right? But this is the road that doesn't exist. So for me, it's do or die. See, if mediation fails, I'm toast. I'll have to just look out for another job and make it work. But so I've not approached a mediation from a legal perspective like a lot of you will be now doing. My legal background helps me, but I barely use it in my practice. I approach mediation from a more psychological point of view. I look at mediation from a more person perspective. But I see a lot of relevance in approaching mediation from the legal perspective, and we need mediation lawyers. We need mediation lawyers to make mediation work in India. And therefore, the legal community is going to be very key to mediation really working out in India, and to making all those dreams come true in 2030. So I say, for a start, be a good lawyer right from the start. Aim to graduate with the best marks like every other student, but keep an eye for mediation. Test your skills at competitions, hone and advance your skills to recognize trainings that are out there. Try and practice it, as I said. Go pull in some files from your senior lawyers or senior partners, see if you can get them into mediation. through as many internships as possible. And I believe that in 10 years from now, there will be a lot of job openings. 5 years from now, that could happen. That's my aim. I hope that happens. So that, and when it happens, you must be ready, because then you should have a resume that will, attract your employer. And you can't be then, grappling to find a training or a workshop and trying to understand the concept, because they will only hire the best. So make sure you're building up to your mediation career that ways. I think a lot of law students trying to look at mediation as a career with regards to being a mediator. And I think what I would advise is train yourself to be a mediation lawyer, so that you can do both. You can also go to court and you can also come to mediation, because litigation is also important, right, for your practice. And therefore, you'll need to be able to wear both hats, a litigation lawyer and also a mediation lawyer. So I say that's the way you should start to train yourself to be a mediation lawyer.
Yeah, yes, sir. So moving on, we surely know that after listening to this interview, students from every field would be interested in following your career path in mediation and conflict resolution. So what are your parting thoughts for the students and who want to approach this subject?
Well, as I just mentioned, I'm sort of a Puritan when it comes to mediation. I don't have any interest in adversarial forms of dispute resolution, but that doesn't mean that's the only way, right? And that's my way, and I live by that. But I think if there are people like me who are out there who feel like litigation is completely not their thing, then remember that if you want to make a career in mediation, you'll need to have a lot of patience and a lot of resilience. It's not going to be easy, especially for a young lawyer trying to get into mediation. But I think if you really want to chase your dreams and follow your fire, you got to start working hard right from the start. Develop the patience, develop the resilience, keep working hard, keep networking, keep writing and learning and reading and creating as much as awareness that you can yourselves. Sometimes you feel like as law students, you cannot create awareness. Yes, you can, because the more awareness you create, tomorrow, those people are going to call you up when you graduate and they'll say, listen, I have a case here. And that's a contact. And then they'll say, listen, you had called me up when you were a 4th-year law student preaching about mediation. Do you practice it right now? And that's when you'll say, yes, I do practice it. In fact, I'm a trained mediation lawyer or a trained mediator. And why don't you come and meet me and let me see if we can resolve this through mediation. So I say you don't have to be completely mad about mediation, but you should start thinking about it seriously, because it is the future for resolving disputes. That's my parting message.
Thank you, sir. So now we'll move on to the rapid fire round. In this, I'll ask you a question and you have to answer in yes. Yes, sir?
This is where I get into trouble, I guess.
Yes, so for sure. So
this is like it's like the coffee with Charul. That's how we would call it, and then get me into trouble.
You'll be diplomatic. I think you'll be mediator, so you'll be diplomatic answer.
I'm not diplomatic. No, let's try.
So you have to answer in a yes or no, and if you want to reason it out, you can reason it out in 1 or 2 sentences. So shall we start?
All right. Sure, go ahead.
So first is mediation is not very developed in India and will act as an inhibitor of the Indian judiciary due to it having its own flaws.
Well, I don't think so. Can you just repeat that again? Can you just repeat that question again? Let's start on the start again. I don't think I caught the first part of the question.
Okay. Mediation is not very developed in India and will act as an inhibitor to Indian judiciary due to it having its own flaws. Like it will increase the number of cases in the Indian judiciary because after mediation, they'll have to go to litigation again and again.
Well, as we say that mediation is the first, a direct answer to your question is no. I think, as we say, it's the primary tool for dispute resolution. There's no loss. You lose nothing by trying mediation. Here's the fact. Now you can answer me after that. Here's the fact that it takes literally 10 to 12 years. That's the average lifespan of a civil court case in India, 10 to 12 years. The average lifespan of a mediation is around 10 to 12 hours. So you figure out who's losing more, whether someone who's trying litigation first and then going to mediation, or someone who's trying mediation first, because all you lose is 12 hours and then trying litigation. So I guess the answer is right there in that stat, and I'm not making up that stat. That's you can find it out. I can give you the source to that. So yeah.
Definitely go with mediation, taking 10 to 12 hours first. This clears it up.
Right.
So moving on to the second question, it is a common practice between judges from honorable high courts and apex courts that after retirement, the judges start practicing in mediation and arbitration chambers. This practice will form a habit of looking forward judges instead of forward-looking judges.
Well, you're going to get me into trouble here, but yes, we do have a lot of judges who get into mediation post-retirement. I'm aware of that. But then there are also many of those who start promoting mediation way early in their careers. Like you have Justice Sikri, Justice Kurian Joseph, who have been part of this process, Justice Sri Krishna, who have been part of this process for quite some time now. In fact, our current Chief Justice of India, Justice Bobde, it was his vision to start the master's course in Mumbai. So you have a lot of Supreme Court judges, even High Court judges, who are very pro-mediation right from their time in court. But yes, I'm aware that a lot of judges look at this as a post-retirement plan. So, I think we need a balance of both. And why not? If they want to dedicate the rest of their careers beyond sitting in a position of judgment to sitting on with parties and resolving disputes, we should be encouraging of that. But there are, of course, those who start encouraging mediation much before they retire. So it's not completely a retirement plan, and that's where me and you change it. We don't have to be 60 years old to start mediating, right? You can start it at a very young age. All you need is the skills and the knowledge, and you're ready to go. Experience will come in time, right? So that's something we can always count on.
Sure, sir. So this next question can be a brutal one, Kaiva. The Ram Janmabhoomi case could have had a better result without clashes if serious negotiation and mediation would have been taken place.
Well, yes, but I'm pretty sure, yeah, I agree with you. Yes, the answer is yes. But I'm pretty sure that people did try and negotiate before. I'm not sure how well they did it, but they did try, and I'm sure there was someone who tried to dialogue things out. This is a case that has been decades old, right? So that's where I talk about, whether you try litigation as try mediation as a last ditch option. That's what they did with the Ram Mandir case, right? The Babi Masjid Ram Mandir case. They tried mediation as a last ditch option, but they didn't try it as a first option. So the answer to your question is yes. If they had tried it as the first option, then remember 10 to 12 hours, and I don't know how many years that case is old, around 8 years, I guess. So it could have prevented a lot of social stress in the country, for sure.
Right, sir. So this is the last rapid fire question. Growth in multi-door resolution system will decrease the faith in the Indian judiciary system.
No, the answer is no. Because I think as every lawyer, we are taught to introduce our clients to multiple doors of helping them solve their dispute, helping them get justice. As a lawyer, we have the ethical obligation to make sure we tell our clients about negotiation, tell our clients about mediation, conciliation, arbitration, litigation, local adalats, whatever. We have to open every window, if you want to call it, and say, give them a sneak peek of what's out there for them, and then it's up to them to decide. Of course, you should counsel them well, but I don't see this by any way discounting what the Indian judiciary is all about. So multi-door dispute resolution system is what will actually help the backlog of cases, which right now stands somewhere close to around 33 million cases in India. So it's surely going to be a blessing more than a curse to the Indian judiciary.
So thank you, sir. This brings us to the end of our interview. We had an amazing time in getting to involve you in the conversation about mediation. And I hope the vision you wanted to send across to students and everybody else has been reached through our platform.
Thank you, Charul. And I'm huge congratulations to Anuranjan and Harshini and the rest of the team at SmallTalk. I think you guys are doing a great job by having these informal, frank conversations with people who are in the industry. I think it brings light to a lot of law students to kind of start thinking about what they want to do in their futures. And so congratulations to yours. And I'm going to be following you all very closely, and I hope you all grow into an organization that law students across the country look up to start choosing their career paths.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.